All right. So, welcome everyone. We are live today, and I am doing something a little bit different. So, many of you know that I have a podcast called Ordinary People Doing Extraordinary Things. Had it for a long time, and I've always done audio interviews. And with everything going on, wanted to turn some of these into live interviews. And so, the first guinea pig that is doing that with us today is Lauren Johnson. So, welcome, Lauren. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so with this show, we really talk about on our Monday episodes, if you listen audio wise, it's really about people's journeys as a whole. And we were talking earlier that you currently live in Boston, but is that where you grew up? Where did you grow up when you were a kid?
Yes. No, I grew up south of Boston and I left for a little while, not too far. I lived in Connecticut, New York for a little bit, but we ended up coming back here once we got married and had kids and everything. So, yeah,
I
been
love
here
it.
forever.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking a little bit about what kind of the things you do now with your kids, but when you were younger, did you ever experience bullying of any kind? And if so, can you share like any of those stories when you were younger?
Oh, sure. When I was younger, of course. I think most kids do. I think most kids get teased and bullied, at different times for different things. And I'll start by saying that I am sandwiched in between two brothers, and none of us have any mercy for the other ones. I get, we still tease each other every single day when we call. And being from the Northeast, I love quick wit and sarcasm. It's what we do. I tease people all day. I tease my own kids. Like that may sound terrible, but that's just who we are and what we do. So I love that when people can take a joke. And it's funny. I was talking to the school principal recently at Alexa's school, my daughter, my 8-year-old daughter. And I said to her, I almost hope she gets teased in school. And I know that sounds terrible for a parent to say, but I want her to be able to build up that resiliency so that when she's an adult, she has thick skin. So, if someone says, hey, you have a big nose or you have ugly hair, I want her to be able to kind of take that, roll with it, say, nah, no, I don't, or whatever. Or, the one that works most for most people is, so what? So yes. And for me personally, growing up, before I had braces, people used to make fun of my buck teeth all the time. But I don't know. I just think that's normal. That's what kids do. So yes, of course. And
Yeah,
I spent the first 10 years of my life held upside down by my ankles by my brother. So, yes, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's something we've all gone through at some point. Definitely middle school for me would have been the time, and where you get made fun of by peers for various things. And so it's interesting. Like it is kind of a rite of passage in some ways, but it's also not a great thing to be doing as well. So you now, before we kind of get into your kid stuff, so you work in healthcare now. Is that something you always wanted to do and always enjoyed, or how did you kind of get into that space?
I sort of fell into it. No, I actually went to school for journalism and PR, and I thought that I would want to do that. But long story short, I started seeing people, and it's funny, no one's asked me this question in a long time, in the news, and no offense to them, but out in the, giant tropical storms on a seawall. And I thought, I don't know if I really want to do that. Or really, terrible stories where a school shooting happens and you have to be there asking the parents really difficult questions. And I admire people for that, but I got to a point where I thought, I don't know if I have that in me. So I sort of fell into the pharmaceutical industry, and I've been in that industry for 16 years now, which is kind of crazy, but yeah. So I guess that's the story.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you went into the journalism stuff. So what made you not want to do it anymore? Is it just because, like you said, when it was like the hard stuff, you didn't want to be around that? Like, what was the switch to say, I want to choose healthcare now versus writing?
Well, I still love writing. I really do. I still do. I just think that, I don't know, when the difference between 18 and 22 is a big difference. And probably at 23 years old, I just sort of changed my mind, like most people do along the way. It wasn't any big epiphany. It was just, I don't know. I sort of just fell into this. I had worked for a different type of healthcare company, working for a doctor's group. And I started meeting some of the people from the larger pharmaceutical companies that would come in. And once I got introduced to them, I looked for a job. So.
And so now you have two young kids. You have an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old, you told me. And when you were young and you decided you wanted to start a family, did you have this like idea of like how it would go and how you would parent? And did that kind of change as you've been a parent now for 8 years?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think a few things. When we had Alexa, when we had our first new baby, I was like, oh, we're not going to have schedules. We're not going to have this or that. But, it didn't really work out that way because I found that, at least in our experience, she sort of needed one. And, she ended up being the boss. She'd get really cranky if we weren't on a specific schedule. And I think we learned pretty quickly in the first few months that it wasn't, some parts are up to us, but a lot of parts wouldn't be too. So I think we changed that. Yeah, I think for the most part, this is what I would have thought the situation we'd be in. And, being a parent is, of course, challenging. I think, you know, it's the, like, hate to sound cliche, but it is the best thing on earth, especially this week with, with everything going on, being home with them. It's been challenging for all of us. But, with the homeschooling slash working and trying to fit everything in, but also I just really appreciate this time with them. And yeah, I think as far as having them have thick skin and kind of teasing them and that sort of thing, that's, yeah, I would have expected that out of both of our personalities as parents.
And so
I
I
don't know if
want
that
to talk
answers it.
about, yeah, something that you're really passionate about right now is about Alexa is a human. And you're talking about it from a voice standpoint. So for those that are not familiar with voice technology, again, this is, some of you know me also from the Inside Voice podcast, but this is my personal one, Ordinary People Doing Extraordinary Things. So voice technology, anything you use with Google Assistant, Amazon Alexa, you would say, Alexa, tell me the weather, Alexa, do this. And so you've kind of created this thing where this petition where you're asking them to change the wake word. But before we get into that, I'd love to know, how did you first interact with voice technology and Amazon Alexa? Was it your kids that started doing it first, or you used it? Like, where did this story begin?
Well, it's funny. So at first, we actually, it's tough to admit this, but at first we thought it was actually kind of funny. So I had gone to visit a college friend and I brought my daughter with me. And she had a new baby. Actually, I brought both kids with me, and she had a new baby, and she had an Echo. And so every time I'd say my daughter's name, Alexa, it would go off. I mean, because that's what it's intended to do. That's the wake. Well, they call it a wake word. In my opinion, I call it a wake name because I don't believe Alexa is a word. But yeah, and so we sort of played with it that day. And I'm like, Alexa, isn't that funny? It's your name. It's the same thing. And we kind of played with it, and it wasn't a big deal. And then my brother had bought a new home, and it was in his thermostat. And so we went over there, and he was totally teasing her. He's like, Alexa, watch this. And so, at first it was really not that big of a deal. That was our first experience with it. And we hadn't been sort of inundated with all of the commercials and the technology and the branding, the impact that it's had in the branding. But at first, no, it was so small, and we didn't realize how much it would grow, that it wasn't really bothersome at all.
And so, I mean, it's funny because I think a lot of people in voice tech, the younger ones and the older adults adopted it faster. So was your daughter playing with it a lot? Was she saying, Alexa, do this, and kind of having fun with it at home, or not really?
So we definitely don't have one.
You're like, now, because
No.
that would probably get annoying, I would assume, right?
Yeah, no, we definitely don't have one. And so she hadn't really played with it. I mean, yeah, she plays with it at friends' houses, so of course she goes for play dates. And I'd say half of her friends, if not more, have them now in their house. And some of them have Google Home, but I don't know if it's just our area or a coincidence, but most of her friends actually have an Echo device. So a lot of them have Alexa as a wake name because it's default. So they do play with it, and they do things that kids do. And I think that when she goes over there, it sort of triggers something in their mind to say, oh, Alexa, oh, let's go play with Alexa. So let's go yell at it. Let's go make it swear. Let's make it play a funny song. So yeah, she definitely has experience with it, but not in our house.
Yeah. And so what type of bullying was she receiving? Was it coming from school? What type of things was she hearing that was starting to kind of make her and you upset?
Yeah, so I think what happened at first was the commercials were the very beginning that started to kind of irritate us and bother us a little bit, because the commercials really have a strong command. It's whether you're watching something on TV, I mean, you can't get away from it. That's the big part of this, is there's no escape. There's no safe zone. So if you're watching TV and you're watching a big football game, or I don't know, one of the most popular TV shows, there's going to be a commercial 9 times out of 10. There's going to be a commercial, if not multiple, that say, Alexa, and with a commanding voice, and complete whatever task it asks. And then, one time when she was bullied in school, and well, when she was teased by other kids, I should say, at school, and they'd say, on the bus, Alexa, I think I told this story before, but Alexa, bark, Alexa, do my homework. And so I think it kids don't really understand what they're saying, and I don't believe they mean any harm. But to her, it hurts because people are basically treating her like a servant. And so, one time, the reason why I wrote to Amazon in the first place, how I started this, is because we were coming home and I was driving her in the car, and she's, in tears and telling me about this. And then I can't turn on the radio. I try and turn on a radio to give, one of her like Taylor Swift songs that she loves to listen to. So I turn that on, and as soon as it ends without any, break, it's an iHeartRadio commercial for because that's typical a lot of the stations around here, but tell Alexa to do this. And so we're just trying to calm down, and then boom, it's right back in your face again. And that's one of the main issues. But the beginning of this, the way it started is I had said to myself, okay, I'm kind of mad and irritated for a couple days, and then I said, okay, I'll write a letter. We'll see what happens. I don't know. So I spent a night writing a letter, and I wrote it to Jeff Bezos, who's obviously the CEO of Amazon. And he, from what I understand, from what I've read, he still has his email address or has people that help read it either for him, whatever. So I sent a letter explaining everything in our situation. And then I was like, okay, people are understanding this a little bit. So I started a website, and I have a friend who is really tech savvy, and she helped me out. She taught me how to go on to GoDaddy and create my own website, because this was completely out of my wheelhouse. I mean, being in pharmaceuticals, I don't have to create websites or be typically on podcasts or anything like this. So this is all very new to me, as well as social media. I joined that too. I had never even been on Facebook. So now I'm on every possible outlet that there is. But so I started to say that I wrote this letter, and then I was on the website, and I started seeing a ton of hits on the website. I mean, like 1,000 hits a month. And then it started growing, and it was 1,000 hits a week. And I look at my analytics, and then I said to myself, okay, maybe I should go on social media. So that's what I did next. And then where it became even bigger is I found that there are so many other people that have been reaching out to me. So there's a group of parents that I talk to all the time that are working on this as well. And they have daughters obviously going through very similar issues, and they're different ages. And then I also have a much larger group of people that are trying to work together to figure out a solution for this. Some of them are women named Alexa. Some of them are teenagers that are being sexually harassed. Some of them are college women with the same issues. And then, like I said, a variation of different people, but all for the same cause. And it's funny, from what I understand, most people will say, this seems so superficial. I mean, out of all the things in the world you're worried about a wake name. But when you spend 5 minutes to really either read the letter or go on to alexasahuman.com or go on to the Facebook, Twitter, and see some, even like the YouTube video that I did at Project Voice in January, and you sort of listen to what's going on, I think people start to understand. And, the one thing I say to people is, if you want to understand this, imagine if we had named our daughter Servant. People would think we were absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. We'd be all over, the Boston news station in a heartbeat. I can't believe these parents named their daughter Servant. What horrible people. And yet Amazon has done that for us, and somehow it's okay. So what we're trying to do is change that so that the kids aren't treated like this, because I can't imagine that this is something that's good for, I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist, but I can't imagine this is good for the psyche. I mean, the impact that this is going to have on these kids and women being treated, as if they were 100 years ago, it's not going to bode well for anyone. And I keep going with this because these kids are reaching out to me. The parents are looking for help, and also the teenagers, like I said, people are asking them for sexual favors as a joke as they walk by. Alexa, do this. Alexa, do that. And then I have college women that are reaching out saying that bouncers at the bar that they walk into, they see their license, and then they'll make a comment, or, guys that are inside the bar, they'll say, Alexa, do this. And it gives people the license to sort of bully, tease, and in some cases sexual harass. And that's where the big issue is. So yes, of course, I'm doing this for my daughter, but really it's much, much bigger than that. And I think the technology is amazing. Like I love everything about it. We probably should get a different brand of one, but I really do think it's amazing. I mean, what it can do is all the different, from like every different technology that's out there and the skills that have been made, incredible. So we're certainly not against Amazon. It's just the branding and the wake name.
Yeah, I mean it's totally understandable, and I think you're right. People don't realize how it can be used. I mean, I've definitely had conversations with other women that say even it just being kind of a female voice in various assistants can feel like you're kind of talking to a servant. How is that kind of translating into how we speak to women as a whole? So I do think it's an important point you brought up, and probably one most people don't think about unless their name is Alexa, or maybe they know someone that's named Alexa. For you as a parent, and as a parent of a daughter named Alexa, who you had told me earlier was 8 years old, so she's still pretty young. What kind of made you decide, like, okay, I need to create a website, I need to write a letter, I need to do a movement? Like, what was kind of that like moment of like, I need to do something. I can't just talk about this and not have it in my house and tell my daughter like it's fine, but I need to take action in a way I feel is appropriate.
Yeah, because exactly, because I feel like there is no escape from it, and there's really no other choice. I mean, we could get mad about it. We could, people say, "Oh, why don't you just do Amazon?" I don't want to do that. I don't think that's going to help anyone. I think that raising awareness around this is going to be the big thing. And it's somewhat comical if you knew me. I mean, this is everything in this is out of my wheelhouse. I'm not used to sort of speaking out in public or any of that. I mean, this is all it's new to me, but I love it because I feel like I'm helping people, and I'm really helping lots of women and lots of children, and this group of women, and I shouldn't say women, group of parents, because there's men involved too, fathers who have reached out to me. And I feel like I need to do this. It's now sort of the weight and pressure on my shoulders where really can't stop this. There's so many people who need help, and I really believe that this needs to change. So yeah, I guess that's it.
Yeah, and you seem, I love that you're in a sense so calm about it too. I think a lot of time, I'm sure you weren't at
Ask my
first.
husband. Yeah.
A lot of times when we get frustrated or upset, we sometimes come from a place of anger. And I think all of us can resonate with that. And I love that you have figured out a way to say, okay, let me put this to good use. Let me just have a conversation about it. As people are talking about it, you have the website, but like, what can be done? Like, do you think anything will change? Or, the hard thing is when you have a company that's had something branded for so long, that's so global, how do they change it? Like, what is your suggestion, or what do you think could, or do you want to happen?
So that's a good question. That's obviously the question. Well, before I get to that though, I want to say this is answering that as well. But I had a friend say to me recently, my good friend, she said, I think because I said that I was going to go into schools, and I met with a principal recently, and I was supposed to meet with the superintendent, but then obviously things kind of went haywire nationally last week. So he had to go into an emergency meeting, but I'd like to start in the school system and start with kids also, not just with adults, but with the kids, because she said this analogy to me. She's like, it's like a seatbelt. Kids know, they hear in school in an auditorium setting from their teachers and from basically everyone. If the police come in and tell them they need to wear seatbelts, they need to protect themselves and be safe. So if you're in the car and your kids are in the back seat and they watch you not put a seatbelt on, they're going to police you, and they're going to say, hey, you need a seatbelt on. You need a seatbelt on. So I think that if we teach kids that this is wrong and that it really shouldn't be a human name, and this is, teach them in that sort of auditorium setting and let them know that this is hurtful to other kids and this is giving people a license to bully, that they'll start to kind of talk to their parents about it as well. And I found that the knee-jerk reaction, again, is just kind of this isn't that big of a deal, but people really need to take the time to think about this, because again, it's not teasing. It's not your average, toughen up kid, the snowflake parent. It's really not that. It's a much larger issue. And then as far as Amazon, is it possible for them to change the word? I believe it is. I mean, will it cost them some time and some money? Yeah, I would assume so. But I think the first step is to take Alexa away as a default, because it comes when you open it up in a box, it's the default wake word. So I think if they change it to computer or to Amazon or whatever it is that they choose, and I do understand why they chose the name Alexa, because being in the pharmaceutical industry and watching the process of naming drugs, I understand why you need these certain letters like an X, which, can help with retaining memory and all that sort of thing. So I understand why they chose it. But if they could pick something that also has an X in it, or something that's just as memorable, but isn't something that you're commanding at a young girl or a young woman to complete tasks, then, but yes, I do believe it's possible. And they're such a big company. I mean, I don't know. I don't pretend to know their numbers, but I would guess that, a month of no deliveries is what they're facing right now has to be, more of a hit than changing a brand name. People are still going to use Amazon. They're still going to buy Echoes, and they're still going to use the device. So yes, I definitely think it's possible. I mean, is it an enormous mountain to climb for one of the biggest companies in the world? Yes. But yes, I do think it's possible.
Yeah, and if anyone has any questions, you can post them in the comments as well. And Bradley Metrock said, he says, thanks to both of you guys for the great work you're doing. I know you were at his event as well, so he is saying hello here. For anyone listening or watching that is a parent, and they're passionate about something, maybe it's not this, but they are like, I really just want to do something to change something for my child, for my school. I know there's a lot within kids with disabilities. How would you suggest that a parent go about doing that to really create a movement and make a difference?
Well, I think that it's just a matter of education. I think if a parent is trying to educate their child, I think it's pretty simple. I think kids are easily, like, they adjust very quickly. They sort of live in the moment. So to say to someone, hey, that hurts their feelings, that's not nice, that's almost enough for a kid. For an adult, they may need a 5-minute education session on what this is, because this is the way they've lived. I mean, it took me a long time to have my father come around to this. He had to see the basically the video at Project Voice. So thank you, Bradley. But yeah, I think it's going to take the adults more time than it is the kids. I don't think educating the kids will be tough at all. But I do think that, if the Department of Education can put something through, if it's an email home to parents, and if it's, from the school system, an auditorium type setting. I mean, I think most schools have either a weekly meeting or however that's run. And from a parent perspective, yeah, I don't think that's difficult. I think kids will grab onto that really quick, especially when we're in the days of, most of them have, peace building pledges and things that they do in the morning at the same time that they do the Pledge of Allegiance. So I think, yeah, for them, it's going to be a lot easier.
Yeah, and I think you've touched on a thing. It's always about educating people, whether it's kids or adults, really putting out the education and knowledge that people understand. I do think that, I've always felt that people come from a genuine place. I don't think most people are trying to hurt other people. They're just uneducated on certain things. So I think it's important that you're bringing that as a whole. Where can people learn more about what we talked about or connect with you if they want to do that online?
Oh, I'd love that. Absolutely. So the website is www.alexaasahuman.com. And I'm also on Facebook, Alexa as a Human, Twitter, Instagram. So you can pretty much find me anywhere. And us as a group too, because like I said, there are other parents and women and people involved. So we are here. If anyone else needs support or wants to join or learn or, help us, we're here. And I just appreciate you having me on so much. Thank you. This was great.
Yeah, I love it. And it's, for this show and for people who listen, it's always the Monday episodes that this is a part of. My whole feeling is that there's so many amazing people around us every day doing and being great. And so you're doing that in your way, which is so wonderful to see, Lauren. The last question I like to ask all of my guests on this show is, what is one word or quote or mantra that you try to live by every single day?
Ooh. Let's see. That's a good question. Well, I think I'd have to go with what I tell my kids. Just be yourself and be kind. That's pretty much what I tell my kids every day. If they get nervous for something or if they don't know what to do, I'll just say, be yourself. So be yourself and be kind. And I think that's what we're trying to do here. I'm not trying to, do this just for fun or to be on camera because that is not me. But yeah, I'm just trying to be myself and show people that there is an effect to what happens here. And so if you just take a few minutes to listen, I don't think anyone would intentionally keep the name.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Lauren. As always, if you guys have comments, you can put them below. You can reach out to Lauren or myself. We will be doing more of these live interviews, so you can tune in to the various places. But thank you so much, Lauren. And I look forward to hearing more and how it goes.
All right. Thanks so much, Keri.